I vividly remember, especially being on the horses, I was like, oh, this is all I have to do, is just try and communicate this feeling right now of being on the horses, and everything that sort of happened is a nice little plot point, but how do you communicate a feeling through a digital medium on a screen?
Matty Hannon,
Thanks
for coming to sit down with me today.
Thanks, bud.
We're here to talk about your film, The Road to Patagonia, which has proven to be quite a success. You've just come back from New York, two-week little quick trip over there with the film. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, well, we had a film tour, or a festival actually, over in Florida was the main sort of draw card, and they asked me to come over, and yeah, we're very generous and sort of, big American hospitality, and offered to bring me over there, and New York was kind of just a sort of little extra side trip just to go and explore the culture of New York, I suppose. It was somewhere that I'd always thought was going to present, maybe a cultural epiphany of some sort, you know. You sort of hear so much about New York, and wanted to go out and see the museums and
But it was a
art
film
galleries.
Festival as well?
In Florida was the film festival.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And the film's been out for about a year now, is it? Or a bit longer?
Well, it actually hasn't been officially released. It's been doing film festivals for about a year,
And there's been quite a number.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, we've had a nice time with it, and just sort of, just taking it really slowly, just mainly kind of hunting those documentary festivals primarily.
Because our local one, Swift Festival, it was one of the darlings, and it sold out 3 times, which is pretty incredible. It's sad that festival's gone now, but how did that make you feel, having been sold out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you do music and lots of creative things yourself, and obviously it's a really nice feeling to have the validation of people interested in your work, and to be receiving positive feedback makes it all worth it, especially on a project like this, because it's just been such a slow burner of it's almost a decade now of making the film, and if you include some of the earliest footage that made it into the film, that stretches back like 16 years. So,
wow.
So to be able to be sharing it with people, and to be, even at this juncture, still be proud of the message and how it's been made. Like, it's not, a high-end production with lots of budget, but I feel like the ethos and the story in there, I still feel really happy to be sharing, and it seems like it's resonating with some people, so it's
totally
great.
It is. And let's talk about it. It's a cinema verite style doco, and you regularly narrate and jump in with all your insights, and there's many adventures on the way. When you set out though, was it always going to be a documentary, or were you just on a road trip collecting videos, or was the intention always to be a documentary?
I think I wanted to make a documentary.
Okay.
I guess initially I studied ecology at uni down in Victoria, and then after a big stint of living overseas, I went back and studied film, because I picked up a camera overseas, and that got me interested in film. And so after I finished doing a bit of study around film, I was like, okay, well, this would be interesting. I'll go and make a little short documentary or something like that, and set off on the journey. And I knew that I wanted surfing to be a part of it, because I knew that's just what I wanted to do on my travel, was go surfing in all these beautiful places. That's just my own personal, compass a lot of the time. But I also knew that I didn't want to make a surf film. A, there's no one in their right mind would, be that interested in watching me surf for too long. And B, I kind of like the idea of delving a little deeper than a regular surf film, and trying to find a narrative that, speaks to something that's more than just the same kind of tired narrative, I think, of the regular surf film. It's sort of been done to death a bit. So tried to, I mean, it still exists within that, the Road to Patagonia. It's still got a little bit of surf film edge to it. And but the main reason I wanted to sort of steer it more towards a documentary was because I love that part of the process of being able to meet people on the road and listen to their stories. And so we ended up doing about 50 interviews with different people along the way, and and only, you know, not even a tenth of those made it into the end film, but the whole process of being able to sit down with people like you are now, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a really enjoyable process of just,
I just find it so interesting in the film. We get exposed to so many of your passions, like the ecology and surfing the icy Arctic waters and mavericks and leading horses and all these things. But the film thing kind of got lost. Like just then you mentioned you went and studied, but can you take me back to where did the film passion start for you?
Yeah, sure. I guess, it happened pretty organically, I think. I never was interested in film. I mean, I grew up enjoying the odd movie, but was never particularly that interested in movies either. But when I finished my studies I think I was 21, I finished, and all I wanted to do was just go off and explore the world. And I went and initially volunteered with a conservation project in remote Sumatra. And through that, I kind of ended up in this island chain that's renowned around the world for being some of the most consistent, if not the most perfect waves in the world. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I think it was in my 4th year there where I was living in a little hut with no power, no telephone, no fridge, no running water, no any kind of motorbikes or cars anywhere. It was a really, really stripped back and beautiful lifestyle. But it was while I was living there that I was like, and this was before Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff, you know. So people back at home, I couldn't just take a photo and show people what I was doing there. It was, my family and friends were a little bit lost as to why I'd just disappeared for 4 years. And so I think I came back for my mum's 50th birthday, and while I was back in Australia, I picked up a video camera with the idea to sort of show my friends and family back at home why I'd stayed for so long. And and then
so that was the real defining moment.
That was the first time I got interested in filmmaking, I suppose. And then and then I ended up meeting all these interesting people and doing all these interviews and asking them questions about their tattoos, because they have this beautiful tattoo culture over there. And I interviewed the last people in that region of Mentawai when there still was the elders that did have the tattoos. I interviewed those guys, and then after the tsunami hit and the big earthquake, I was sort of just collecting stories along the way. And then when I got home, I realized that I actually had a lot of really interesting material. And then that was the impetus to go. I went and did a master's in documentary filmmaking.
Okay, so it was after that.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, there's some amazing footage from your time, that 5 years in Indonesia, right?
Yeah, it is Indonesia.
It's incredible. Was it? I can only imagine it was super surreal. Was it strange to think that the people that you're spending time with would never want to, or perhaps even have the chance to enter the Western world? You know, because it's so funny how, Western people can go and lose themselves in these other cultures. Was it really strange to be like, oh, they're never going to come and see where I'm from, and nor would they want to, you know? Like, did you feel, how was that contemplation for you?
I mean, I think there's a pretty big power imbalance there with economy and colonialism.
Yes.
And I think you're probably right in that some people probably wouldn't be that interested in seeing Australia, but I think a lot of them would genuinely love to jump on a plane like we were able to. and come over to Australia and see how we live and whatever, see a kangaroo, you know, like they've heard of these things. I mean, it's so remote, you know, you've got to think of somewhere like Bali, or obviously Bali's a beautiful culture in itself and feels exotic, but then you move to Java and then that's a little bit more further away from the Western kind of normalcy. And then you go to Sumatra and then there's really remote island chain off the coast of Sumatra, and then you start to realize how remote this place is, and that's why they have this super beautiful culture and endemic animals and plants on this little island chain called the Mentawai Islands, is because of their isolation.
Yes.
And so because they've been so independent for thousands of years, they've just got such a rich biodiversity and culture. And yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Because there's always that element of like when you take a camera to somewhere to these places and you're like, oh, am I exposing this purity, you know? And how to be respectful, but then also share and then create awareness. Like I'm sure you would have been toying with those ideas.
Yeah, totally. And to this day, for sure. And who knows how I'll feel in 20 years' time when I look back at this film. Is it the right thing to be including like exceedingly traditional people into this adventure documentary? You know, what are the ethics around that? And I've thought really deeply about it, and I've consulted with the people over there, shown them the film and that sort of thing, and I feel quite comfortable about it right now. I feel really good to be sharing the message, and I feel, if anything, the goal of this film is to elevate those voices. It's, you know, there is this central narrative of a love story and people having a good time or having, you know, mishaps and that sort of thing, which makes it engaging. But I don't think I would have finished the film if it had just been that stuff. The whole kind of premise of the film is this reflection on who we are as modern Western people, and the impacts that we're having on the world, not just humans but other non-human people.
No, I think it was really powerful to be in there, and I'd love to talk about the sweating and the chanting and the initiation that happened. Is that, you know, the scene that where they're circling around you, was that initiation of sorts? Tell us more about that. What did you get initiated into? There's lots of sweating
in the ceremonies. It's just, I won't try and explain their culture, just because there's so much to explain, and it's not really my place to explain it. But I guess it's just really beautiful and so deeply embedded in the same kinds of ritual and initiation that even you and I have come from in deep time, you know, before perhaps Britain was colonized by Romans, and, you know, before this English came to Australia, similar kind of ceremony and initiation in indigenous Australian culture. And it doesn't matter where you go around the world, there's these same kind of frameworks. They're just coloured a little differently, or they sing different songs in different keys, and so I'm not trying to say everyone's the same, but I suppose my experience over there was a very profound sort of awakening to something much deeper than what the modern scientific, you know, globalized paradigm really allows you to think in a sense. Because
were you quite a sciencey brain before that?
I think so. I've always been quite creative, but then got steered towards science and that sort of thing. And at university, very much came to the conclusion that science was the ultimate truth, and that this was the only real true way, the true lens to be able to perceive the world. And going over to Mentawai really broke that. It made me realise that science is an amazing tool. The methodology itself is incredible, to be able to sort of reduce these different data sets and find answers. It's incredible, and I still think the same thing, obviously. But I do think it has its shortcomings in the, in that it does potentially patronise and push to the side a lot of really valuable knowledge and culture that we've got left in the world as a collective humanity. And I mean, you've only got to look at where we're at right now with the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution. Like, it directly correlates to the same the ecocide that we're experiencing right now. And so to say that science is the answer seems very strange when the rise of science has really brought us deep destruction. And so I think that's why we need to say, hey, science is amazing.
And it's an infant in comparison to these other traditions. Like, it's 500 years it's been around or whatever. In comparison to these millennia of traditions.
Yeah, and here we sit on Gumbaynggirr country, when that goes without saying how far back that stretches.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. But just to, I suppose, finish off with am I happy of having made a film and including the Mentawai people in it? I definitely am, and it's helped them as well in sort of financial means, because I've used a lot of the income that's come from the film, from screenings and the distribution and that sort of stuff. I've funneled, I haven't taken any profits so far actually, but I've funneled a lot of that back into my friends in Mentawai. They're still really close friends, and paid for university fees. And right now they're building a longhouse in the village where I spent the most time with the traditional people, and it's going to become an education centre. That they actually approached me about the idea, which is really cool. It wasn't like this, hey, you should build this centre to make sure that your beautiful nostalgic culture remains. This is something that came from from my friend Aman Lepon.
And so the proceeds are helping.
They're literally, I could show you the videos that they sent me last night. They're right at this juncture right now, they're nailing the frame together. They've got the frame up, and they're looking to do the floorboards and all the rest of it in the next week or two. So
incredible.
Yeah, so that's kind of nice, to think that that it can become a little bit circular like that, where I'm taking. It's definitely taking when you're filming and you're using people's stories, but to be able to sort of give back at the same time, I think, I know that they're more than happy. And
no, you've always come across as a really cautious, thoughtful guy that's thinking about every step with the documentary. So let's move onwards. The journey goes where you start in Alaska, and it becomes apparent that you're starting to juggle these different threads, right? There's the surfing film, there's the love story, there's the reality revealing narrative, there's your spiritual insights, there's nature activism. Did you feel like you were ever getting lost juggling the stories, or?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I think in my head while we were doing the journey, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is great. Look, it's all adding to the story, and great. This is all going to come together so beautifully. And I vividly remember, especially being on the horses, I was like, oh, this is all I have to do, is just try and communicate this feeling right now of being on the horses, and everything that's sort of happened is a nice little plot point, but how do you communicate a feeling through a digital medium on a screen? And I was really confident when we were on the trip, but then we got home and the daunting task of editing just slapped me around the face for a couple of years. And I really struggled, actually. It was at times it felt like it was an impossible task. Motivation levels would just plummet, and I'd struggle to get more than, I'd sit in front of a computer for 8 hours and be lucky to have more than an hour's worth of productive work actually happen, you know.
Because I guess certain elements would pop out more at you, and then you'd be following that and going, oh, is this the main thread or whatever? But you did end up weaving it perfectly, but I can imagine it would have been a laborious journey.
Well, and I think I'd changed a lot as a person, where I was never in front of a computer for the last few years, and then all of a sudden here I was forcing myself to sit in front of one for 8 or 10 hours a day, and so I actually really struggled, and there was probably 2 catalysts that helped to get the film finished. One of them was that I started microdosing magic mushrooms, and that was, and when I say microdosing, I'm talking homeopathic amounts. So there's absolutely no conscious effect of the mushroom itself. Like nothing is felt. I would just dip my little chopstick into the powder and just have the tiniest little stuff on the end, and I had that a few days a week for a few months, and that was just incredible for tuning in my focus and also for my decision-making processes. So before, I'd been so caught up in the what ifs of, oh, if I cut out this footage, that means that storyline's gone, and is that the right thing to do? And then before, how I was mentioning, I didn't have the motivation to just really get stuck into it and be productive the entire day. And it was incredible how, using that as a medicine to really just tune me into this creative space and super productive space. That was one of the big catalysts, and I did that for maybe 3 months, a few times a week, and felt fantastic the whole time. And like I said, no hallucinations or anything. It was just like a mood enhancer or something, I don't know, but it really worked. And the second thing was bringing elders and mentors on board, and luckily one of the other big challenges was not having funding to finish the post-production. It's so expensive to make a film. But when I secured investment, it meant that I could then pay some amazing editors who were living in the Byron Shire, where I was living at the time, to sit with me and just sort of be a sounding board, I suppose. Just especially one fella, Mike Bolson, who he actually edited Mad Max 2, the famous one down in the South Australian desert, and he's just a real gentleman. He's a fair bit older. He'd be close to 80 now, I think, and but he's kind of diving deeply into some of these elements that we've been talking about in the film, and so it was just a really beautiful mentorship of. He would just encourage me to follow my heart and what was true in the film. He always kept bringing me back to that, is that true? And if it felt true, then we would leave it in. If it felt,
I love that. Asking that with your creativity, just every little step of the way. You also did some screenings before to see what the public thought, and I went to the one in the youth hub. And I thought that was really, it showed a lot of humility on your part. Like you were hungry to know. What was some of the most epic advice or humbling advice you got from those sessions? Do you remember? Was it helpful?
It was super helpful. I really loved that process, and I'd definitely do it again, as far as showing. A film before releasing it, getting a sounding board from the public, just random audience members. I can't really remember.
Everyone went gentle on you then.
Specific, people were really nice, and I think the main thing, I sat in the back of the room, and the main thing for me was sort of feeling the energy in the room a little bit, just seeing, like, I was like, oh, people are laughing, like, that's actually funny, that's cool, and okay, I'll leave that bit in. And then I remember at one point towards the end of it, I was like, oh God, it's been really silent for a while, this must be a bit of a boring part. But then when the film ended and just sort of people, when they turned around and we were talking, I was like, oh no, they actually enjoyed it. And there was just this really lovely exchange of people's opinions, and it felt great. But I did go back and change the film pretty majorly after that. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah, cool. I want to talk about the love story element, because it's so poetic, you and Heather meeting in Vancouver and surfing together. It just seems like something out of a novel. Was it hard to keep the poetry alive, or was it actually that romantic the whole time? Or was there a clash of what you wanted to see happen and what was actually happening? Like, there was a point where there was an honesty about fighting, but generally it felt like it was just this really fluid, beautiful romance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie.
Yeah.
It's not real life.
Yeah.
So, you're squeezing 2.5 years of living together. Oh, I don't think it'd have been quite that long. The journey for me was that long, but anyway, we'd squeezed a whole bunch of time into just 1 hour or an hour and a half movie, so you can't fit it all in. But generally speaking, it was a super beautiful time. You know, that was our honeymoon period. We met on the trip, and then all of a sudden we were living together in a tent and doing all these wonderful things together. And a lot of them were hard, but that's where Heather's tenacity really shines through beautifully. She's just such a strong, physically determined person. And and I think, you know, she saw some good elements in me, surprisingly. And because
it must have been so hard to stay present without being obsessed with the outcome of the film too, you know, because you'd project being like, oh, okay, you know, we've met and we're doing this thing, we're going to go here, but then maybe it doesn't go to plan, and then maybe you miss the moment, or you're always trying to grab the camera to get a moment, and maybe spoiling a moment.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, for sure, for sure. I mean, when we were on the trip, it was definitely about filming a lot of the trip, for sure, but it also wasn't like that was the only goal of the moment. You know, we were definitely having, I mean, 90% of the trip, 99% of the trip never made it into the film. You know, we experienced so much of it. But those moments where we're like, shit, grab a camera, you know, like this has got to happen. And Heather was just learning to use a camera, and then she'd stuff it up, and I'd be a dick and yell at her for, you know, whatever.
You lost it.
Yeah, you missed the moment. Well, I remember there were times where there were these really dramatic things happening, like a horse would be breaking a surfboard or something, and I was like, and Heather would be filming, and then right as the surfboard's getting broken, she'd stop and put the camera down and be like, oh my God, this horse is going crazy, which is a total normal reaction. But I was like, what are you doing? You just missed the And so, poor Heather. And that's where it got really difficult. It was probably towards the end where in my mind I was like, oh, I actually think we've got a little story here. And maybe I became more determined to finish it well and push the filmmaking thing harder than what it had been throughout the rest of the trip.
Interesting.
And then that's when Heather got pretty over it, I think.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
What would you say was the most challenging point of the trip, apart from wrangling wild horses and?
Most challenging point. Yeah, it was probably when Heather left. Yeah. And just everything. I thought I was on such a mission, you know, to get to Patagonia, and then after Patagonia, I was going to go and live in Indonesia, happily ever after, and and then none of that ever happened. So, You also started weaving in facts and revelations about capitalistic Western society, and a thread started appearing that I actually don't think was there when you did the screening in public. It must have come later. Why isn't nature considered a sentient being with rights? Which I really loved that thread. And why is it only that humans and corporations are considered as persons? How can rivers, trees and forests and oceans also have this? How do you feel about this thread now? Are you still just as passionate about that from your experience? Yeah, 100%. I think it's the central issue to the environmental crisis that we're in at the moment is how we perceive the world, the lens that we're seeing it through. You know, it's not that we don't have the technology to fix certain elements that we can fix through technology. It's not that we don't have the intellect to do it. We don't have the compassion. Well, maybe the compassion is the issue. But, you know, we've existed so beautifully in the world for hundreds of thousands of years as humans. You know, in prehistory as hunter-gatherer people, we've just, you know, from what we understand, we've lived quite sustainably, even though we've always had our changes and impacts on the world. But to see what has happened with this crazy morphing of our psyche in the last few thousand years, since the agricultural revolution, since Judeo-Christian religions that have taught us ideas that, you know, the real heaven is actually this transcendental thing up in the sky, that if we behave ourselves on earth, then we can go to where we really want to be. Where, you know, I would argue that, and a lot of people would argue, is we're already here, you know, and if there's something afterwards, fantastic. But yeah, I won't go too deeply into religion, but I do think that along the way with these different revolutions, we've lost our way. And we were always really deeply connected through, you know, a mind frame of, you know, anthropologists call it animism, which is experiencing the world through community and understanding that life is lived through relationships, whether it's a relationship to your water or a relationship to the cow that you'll slaughter to eat, or a relationship to the timber that will build your home. You understand that you need to keep the forest healthy in order to have a home. You need to keep the herd healthy and numbered to, you know, to keep eating, and the water not poisoned. All of those relationships were managed really well, it seems, historically, through a different lens when we used to see ourselves as a part of this web of life. Whereas now, it seems to me that technology and science have been heralded as such an answer to humanity that we have this arrogance towards the rest of the natural world, and we sort of look down on the cows and we put them in feedlots and say, well, you can just eat pellets until the day you're slaughtered, and you know, who cares if we poison the water in the rivers, as long as the stuff in our tanks, or as long as we filter it, it's fine. It doesn't matter about the frogs and everyone else who needs the clean water. And I think, you know, it's such a huge discussion that we could chat about here for hours and hours. But yeah, I do think we need to build rights around the more than human world, not just the human world. Like like corporations are recognised as people, but why don't we recognise a forest?
Yes.
It's we're living in an extractive time rather than a regenerative time, and I think that's just a conversation that I'm really interested to open with this film. I know that it's not going to present the solutions, but yeah, to me, I do see that as a central issue, because we have the solutions around us, but right now, the way that we perceive the world is false.
Well, you mentioned in the film that there's the river in New Zealand, Wangui River. How do you pronounce it?
I think it's, is it Wanganui?
Wang maybe.
Whanganui.
Is it? Yeah.
Whanganui, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Whanganui.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the film how it actually has been recognised as a being with rights, and there were some others. Can you remind me? Do you
Ecuador's changed its constitution, and I mean these sort of legislative changes, they come with complications as well, because you know once a river has its own personhood, does that mean that...
And who's in charge of dictating what it's
Yeah, and can
right
you sue the river if it floods some buildings?
Wow.
You know, all these crazy ideas that people are sort of poking holes in the framework of giving personhood to rivers or mountains or whatever it is. I mean, I don't think that that's an ultimate solution either. You know, giving personhood to the natural world, but I think it's a nice step. It's a nice offering to say, okay, we've been mistreating you for so long. We've totally misunderstood where humanity is in the world. How about we just sort of take a moment to appreciate you and at least recognise you for being a living entity rather than just this resource that we can continually extract.
Yeah, and you live now on the mid-north coast where we have some of the most amazing rivers and incredible rainforests here.
That's why we moved here, yeah.
What's your, you know, can your film be used as an activism for that? Like, you know, in your backyard, are you now inspired to maybe help our rivers in some sort of way? Or, like you just said, you're not sure about the personhood, but yeah, have you got any plans, ideas locally?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see filmmaking as my toolkit mostly, or storytelling really. It doesn't have to be in the form of film. But yeah, not this weekend, but next weekend, we've teamed up with some great people in the Yamba community. We're launching another half-hour documentary there. And we've got a big musician, Rai X. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he is originally from Yamba. He lives in California now. He's like quite big time in the world stage. He's coming back to Yamba, his hometown, we're going to play this film. We're going to have a big dance with his music and celebrate the community that live on the Clarence River. And you know, the Clarence catchment extends into the Dorrigo Plateau behind us here in Bellingen, and that film is about the mining that's just booming right now. In particular, copper and cobalt mining. There's also gold mines proposed and probably some others that I'm not aware of, but they're starting to mushroom up along the river, especially the Clarence River. So these mines are mushrooming up along the Clarence River, and that extends up into the Dorrigo Plateau, the Clarence catchment right behind us in Bellingen here. And it's crazy. Under New South Wales legislation, you can mine right up to 1 metre of the river's edge, which is obviously outrageous. But again, I think that actually speaks back to what I was mentioning before about technology always being heralded as the only answer, that we can't look back within ourselves and our communities to look for the real answers, because, you know, the big new Green Deal or the energy revolution, the big transition now that's moving from fossil fuel combustion engines across to you know, renewable electric engines, we've still got to be mining these rare earth minerals like the copper and the cobalt, and that's happening right in our backyard right now. And so it's just, that's what I'm trying to say with the film, is we can't just keep coming up with these scientific, technological answers to questions that are actually, they're almost, I don't want to use the word spiritual because that comes with so many connotations, but it's maybe the best word of a self-reflection and an understanding of where humanity's gone wrong. And it's not the wrong invention, it's not the wrong piece of technology, it's our way of looking at things. And
the answer would be too scary because it means like globalism would have to end. You know, we like all aspects of our lifestyle. I mean, and that I listen to people like Helen and Norbeg Hodge, who's been such a strong leader in the localization movement of speaking out against globalization and speaking for the localization of economy so that it's empowering and descaling these extractive industries and economies. And she's really
I guess, inspiring in the sense that, you know, if we act now and if we can work towards these smaller localized economies that will be much richer for the general public and for Joe Bloggs walking down the street, or the farmer, you know, bellow beef out here, or whoever's doing the flowers, you know, it's going to work much better for most people, 99% of people. The problem is we have these power structures in play right now where we live in a corporatocracy where, you know, Jeff Bezos and the Zuckerbergs of the world are able to control us through media and our consumption habits and all the rest of it, and we hand our money off to them, and the government keeps giving subsidies or whatever they do, and you know, we're in a bit of a systemic shithole, really, aren't we? That's the problem.
Yeah. Thank you for putting.
Sorry.
No, it's good. So what's next on the cards for Matty Hannon, apart from this thing in Yamba in 2 weeks?
So this weekend I'm going camping for 5 days with some good friends of ours, and just going to have some good nature time, and just hopefully try and read some books and swim in some nice rivers.
But you're going on tour.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I want to try. I'm just trying to like calm things a little. But yeah, apart from that, we're gearing up to take the film on tour for 2.5 to 3 months. Yeah, the road to Patagonia, and it's coming to Coffs Harbour on the 24th of February. And yeah, just looking forward to getting away from too many cameras and computers, which sort of forms a lot of my normal work, and being able to spend a lot of time meeting new people and having good conversations. And
Oh, well, thanks so much for having a chat with me. I just wanted to finish on a quirky note. Have you ever heard of the word cottywomple?
No.
So I think your film's a cottywomple film, and the definition is to travel in a purposeful manner towards a vague destination. And
Wow.
I think that describes your film beautifully, because there was so much purpose and so much determination. But yeah, the destination was vague, but you got there.
Yeah,
So,
well, thanks for enlightening me. Cottywomple.
Cottywomple.
Is that a name for...
That's a word.
It's a film? Oh,
No, it's not a style of film.
It's just a style of travel. Is that right?
The word cottywomple means that it's a style of travel, to travel in a determined way for a vague destination.
Wow, you hit the nail on the head, Al. Thank you.
Thanks so much.